All right, so I picked up a book yesterday on enforcers. I've often been asked about enforcers, about fighting in the game. Fighting has its place in the game, but if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. I've skimmed through it. I've gone through a lot of the chapters and gone through some of the players. And I get asked a lot about who my favorite enforcers are. So I'm not going to rank them in terms of 1 through 4, but I'm going to give you my top 4, and number 1 on the list is Tiger Williams. This is done in order of when they played hockey. So it starts with, and I'm not old enough to remember this one, so don't start making jokes. Eddie Shore. Starts with Eddie Shore. So that's back in 1926 right through to 1940. A little bit before my time. And then next on the list is John Ferguson. So, Tiger Williams, one of the game's most colorful personalities, was as outspoken as he was pugnacious. Still is. He has some very strong opinions on the Canucks, on Willie Desjardins, Banning, Linden. It's interesting to listen to. I think he's off base, but yeah. Talk about his playing career. Williams fought Jack McElhargy in one of several brouhahas when he was with Toronto against the Flyers. Violence erupted beyond control to the point where 4 Flyers players were charged criminally. They were eventually acquitted 1 week later. Game 6, even more fisticuffs took place. Williams renewed hostilities with McElhargy and a second period bout, then exchanged punches with Dave the Hammer Schultz late in the third period. Schultz accused Williams of biting him in the face, while Tiger was given a gross misconduct for a headbutt. So keep that in mind the next time you hear about some little thing that happens in a skirmish in a game. The Leafs were eliminated in 7 games, were developing into cup contenders with players like Darryl Sittler, Lenny McDonald, Borje Salming, all in the prime of their careers. Williams stood just 5'11", but was always ready to answer the challenge of any foe who dared to take liberties against Toronto's star players. Twice in a Toronto uniform, Williams led the NHL in penalty minutes in 76-77 and 78-79. The totals were 338 and 298, which just dwarfs anything the guys get now for penalty minutes. That's why when they talk about enforcers now and I look at their penalty minute totals, I'm like, that's not an enforcer's penalty minute total. Enforcers are getting the 5 minutes, the game, the personal misconduct, the hitting a fan with a shoe misconduct. Get 45 minutes in a game. Toronto forced overtime in Game 4, hoping to avoid a sweep against the Canadiens. And that was in 78-79. Williams took a costly, controversial penalty in the extra session, and Larry Robinson, whom Tiger had allegedly high-sticked, scored on the ensuing power play to eliminate the Leafs. Williams immediately charged at referee Bob Myers, who had made the call only to be restrained by Robinson himself. He wrapped his big arms around me, Williams said in his autobiography, Tiger: A Hockey Story. He said, "Forget it, kid. It was a expletive call. But I'll take you fishing in the summer. The big guy saved my neck, all right, because if I got a hold of Myers, I'm sure I would have done him serious damage." So yeah, Tiger Williams was aptly named, and he was fun to watch. He really was. Unfortunately for Leafs fans, the beginning of a new decade was also the start of a period of turmoil under eccentric owner Harold Ballard. The dismantling of the team began with the trading of McDonald 4 days after Christmas Day in 1979. Then 2 months later, on February 18th, 1980, Williams and Jerry Butler were dealt by GM Punch Imlach to Vancouver for Bill DeLego and Rick Vive. And Vive was fantastic. So there's no unfortunate about picking up Vive for Tiger Williams. In Williams' first full season with the Canucks, the player reached career highs in goals, 35, and points, 62. Tiger also collected 343 penalty minutes to lead the NHL for a third time. And rarely in league's history had a penalty minutes leader for a season been so productive. Williams was the first player to ever score 30 or more goals in a season with at least 300 penalty minutes, a feat matched only by Al Secord the next season. So it hasn't been done again, and it will never be done again. I don't even know if anybody's going to get 300 penalty minutes again in a season. Altogether, Williams played 4 full years in Vancouver before being traded to Detroit for Rob McClanahan in 1984. Midway through the 84-85 campaign, he was shipped to Los Angeles. He retired as the NHL's all-time penalty minute leader with 3,966 penalty minutes. Just think about that. That's just insane. Did you know that after his retirement, Tiger took his famous "done like dinner" quote to new heights? In '87, Williams teamed with Casey Wilson to write a 102-page cookbook titled "Done Like Dinner: Tiger in the Kitchen." The culinary guide featured several hockey-inspired recipes, including Maple Leaf apple brownies, Washington Capitals speedy baked beans, and Boston Bruins clam chowder. Individual players had their own dishes. For example, there was Gordie Howe's legendary rice, King Clancy's Hall of Fame cheesecake, and Eddie Shack's beer-baked ham. Of course, there was the ultimate dessert, Stanley Cup bars. So there you go. Tiger Williams. Number 2, and this I'm not going to get as far into this as I did with Tiger, because Tiger is just, there's so much to tell. Basile McRae. McRae was drafted by the Nordiques in 1980. He had a productive junior career with the London Knights. And most enforcers and role players will have productive junior careers. And then as NHLers, that changes. And, good on them for being able to adapt. I'm looking in Vancouver at Brendan Gaunce, is a guy who went from projected, first liner, could be a top guy, to bottom 6, decent checking center. McRae was used sparingly in 2 seasons in Quebec. He played just 42 of a possible 160 games. In August '83, he was traded to Toronto for Richard Turmel. Even so, he was granted even less playing time with the Maple Leafs and instead spent the bulk of his tenure skating with the AHL's St. Catherine Saints. Having played a scant 4 games over 2 years in a Leafs uniform, McRae signed as a free agent with Detroit in '85. And then he didn't play for them either. But in '86, '87, McRae had paid his dues and was finally a regular presence in the Wings lineup. He played in 36 games before a 6-player trade involving teammates John Ogrodnik and Doug Shedden sent him back to his original team, Quebec. Brent Ashton, Gilbert Delorme, and Mark Kumpel were sent to Detroit in return. Interestingly, the transaction occurred just moments after the Nordiques edged the Wings 3-2 on January 17th. In his second stint with Quebec, McRae was given far more ice time than had been granted his rookie year and played all but one of the team's final 34 games that year. He ended the season with 342 penalty minutes, the 4th highest total in the NHL. McRae had served notice as one of the league's busiest fighters, squaring off against fellow pugilists as no further than 28 occasions. In the playoffs, he led all postseason performers with 99 minutes and 99 minutes and penalties. That's crazy. Again, comparing that to today's, nobody's going to get 100 penalty minutes in the season. In arguably the most infamous episode from that season, where is it? There we go. In the summer of '87, McRae signed as a free agent with the Minnesota North Stars, a franchise that ended up being given the most playing time and stability. He was fantastic for Minnesota as an enforcer. They had McRae and Churla, and Churla's got a chapter in here too, but McRae was my favorite. Career highlight: many hockey players have taken their talents to the silver screen. Cam Neely was Jim Carrey's nemesis Seabass in Dumb and Dumber. Eric Nestorenko portrayed the father of Rob Lowe's character in Youngblood. And Basile McRae made his motion picture appearance in '92, playing himself in a cameo appearance in The Mighty Ducks. That's too bad. Career highlight. The film starred Emilio Estevez as Gordon Bombay, the coach of a Pee-wee hockey team comprised of misfits. You guys have seen it. I forced myself to sit through it once. Never did it again. In one scene, McRae and Minnesota North Stars teammate Mike Modano skate off the ice just as they're greeted by Bombay and his young players. This guy used to rule in Pee-wee, McRae tells Modano after reacquainting with Bombay. The awestruck youths gaze open mouths. Hey Ducks, listen to this guy. He knows what he's talking about, McRae encourages the team before turning back to Bombay. If you ever want a shot, let me know. I'll give you a tryout with the minor league club. That's cute. And, of course, the original film was served as the nickname of the Mighty Ducks for Anaheim. So, he played 576 career games, 2,453 penalty minutes. I remember him being tough, and I remember him playing a role in the '91 run to the Stanley Cup Final for Minnesota. Number 3, showing I'm a Canuck fan, Gino Odjick. Odjick's 12-year career, the first 8 of which was spelt with Canucks, will be inextricably linked to one player, Pavel Bure. And it was. When I played, if anyone went to Pavel's airspace, he was getting a beating, Odjick told the Vancouver Province. In the last 4 years of my career, we didn't play together, but no one dared touch him, even still. An Algonquin who grew up in Maniwaki Reserve in Quebec, Odjick played for 2 seasons as a junior with the Laval Titans of Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. While he contributed occasionally on the scoreboard, Odjick clearly demonstrated the size and strength of his biggest assets. In 101 regular season games over those 2 years, Odjick scored 21 goals, 62 points, and registered 558 minutes in penalties. An average of more than one major penalty per game. So Odjick knew his game, and he played it. The Vancouver Canucks made Odjick a 5th-round selection at the 1990 entry draft and assigned him to the Milwaukee Admirals. He was recalled by the parent club to make his NHL debut on November 21st, 1990, when the Canucks hosted the Chicago Blackhawks, and he wore the number 66. By the end of his rookie season, Odjick demonstrated to the rest of the league that he was willing to take on any and all comers. He fought both Edmonton's Dave Brown and St. Louis's Tony Twist, 2 of NHL's hardest hitters, twice in one game. I don't think Dave Brown's in here. That's weird. The next year marked the arrival of the Canucks' future franchise player, Bure. Odjick immediately developed a close friendship with the gifted Russian winger, and the two became inseparable. Pat Quinn, now the Canucks bench boss, assigned Odjick to be Bure's protector, and the results were immediate. Bure was given open space to dazzle Vancouver fans with breakneck speed, tallying 35 goals and claiming the Calder Trophy. Years later, Odjick would name one of his children after Bure, and would also play an influential role in having the number 10 raised to the rafters in Vancouver's home rink. And he did. Odjick has remained somewhat of an ambassador for the Canucks, and of course his health issues are well known. And I, among any fan of hockey, wish him only the best. He knew his role. He scored well, actually, for an enforcer. He had 1 year in Vancouver where he scored 16 goals. That was in 93-94. So the year that the Canucks went to the final, Odjick's totals, if anybody can read those, Odjick's totals weren't bad. He ended up with 64 goals in his career, 137 points, 2,567 penalty minutes. Very good. Very good. And about Pavel, again, he says, I was crazy enough to believe Pavel could get in the Hall of Fame and he could get his jersey retired, Odjick said to the Vancouver Province. People kept saying it would never happen. I kept asking and asking. He was very skeptical at first and didn't think it could be done. We never quit. And the last enforcer I want to cover is John Scott. He won me over. For one January weekend in 2016, John Scott earned much more than Warholian 15 minutes of fame. And he's on the cover of this book. So, I mean, they're selling the John Scott story with the book. By the end of festivities at the 61st NHL All-Star Game held in Nashville, Scott, a journeyman who had all of 5 career NHL goals to his credit, was indelibly recognized as one of the most popular players to ever participate at the event. Voting him in started as a joke. And it really kind of was. But when the NHL made it clear they didn't want him there, and the NHL actually kind of approached him and said, you really want to be a joke in front of your own kids? Do you really want to do this? Oh, that rallied fans from all 30 franchise, all 30 fan bases rallied behind him. And the NHL tried to bury him in Montreal. The NHL tried burying him in the minors. We got to get rid of this guy. This is a joke. It's making the whole All-Star Game a joke. No, that's not what made the All-Star Game a joke. The All-Star Game's been a joke for years. This was fun. The idea of a guy being in the All-Star Game who, I don't know, doesn't deserve to be there, but you have a system that allows him to get voted in, kind of cool. The NHL changed the voting system this year, and I didn't care. I couldn't have cared less. At all. I didn't pay attention to the All-Star Game much this year. I didn't care about the vote. I didn't care. Because I looked and I'm like, oh, we're back to just your standard form. It's popularity contest. And sure, John Scott got in by popularity contest. He did. But it was fun. It was fun to watch him in that All-Star game. It was the first All-Star game I had watched in forever. I mean, the guy only played 286 games in the league and had 544 penalty minutes to go with his 5 goals. So, you know, the fact that they end it with him, you know, brings about one interesting fact. The enforcer as we knew it is gone. The Tiger Williams style enforcer, the guy who can actually play hockey, those guys are always going to be in the game. Those are your power forwards. But the guys who are just there to fight, like Basile McRae was for Minnesota, they're out. It's a role that you can't afford now in a league where you roll 4 lines. You can't afford to have a guy who's playing 5 or 6 minutes a night, because it's a weakness that's going to get exposed over an 82-game schedule. You can bring them up. You know, famously, guys like Tom Sestito. To some extent, Jared Boll is a hired gun now, where he'll sit out and then he gets brought in, knows his job. Tonight, Nashville. I watched Nashville bring in McLeod. And what does McLeod do? First shift, he grabs onto Reeves. Reeves smiles like, all right, I see what's going on here. That's it. That's as far as an enforcer gets now. So, you know, that role is increasingly unnecessary, and I think it's probably out of the game for good. The other reason that I would recommend this book, now I got it for $7 at Kohl's, is it discusses how many of these guys have ended up with substance abuse issues, depression issues, really serious problems, and the amount of guys in this book that are no longer with us is stunning. You have NHL enforcers and WWF wrestlers, and these are guys who are paid to perform. These are guys who are paid to entertain and fight. And by the nature of what they do, in both cases, they're going to get beat up, banged up, and ultimately cast aside. Because when your team is looking at the most important guys to re-sign and keep, even back then, your enforcer was whatever. Enforcers were seen as interchangeable. So you could lose one and just pick up somebody else. Here's our enforcer. And if an enforcer fell out of the NHL, not a whole lot was said about it. So, you know, there's a lot of work going into looking at the role of the enforcer, at what these repeated fights throughout your career do to you after you're done with the game, mentally and physically. And it's a story that's going to continue to play itself out. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Tell me your favorite enforcer. I know there's a lot of you guys who are going to pick Bob Probert, Ty Domi, John Kordick. Let me know why. Let me know your favorite fight, that kind of thing. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Again, I'm not pro or anti-fighting. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with the concussion lawsuit, though, because it is going to have a major effect on whether you're ever even going to see those style of fights come into the game again. Just some of the fights they describe in there are pretty amazing. And yeah, it's a good book. So this is kind of a book review too. Pick up the book, discuss enforcers. Even if you don't like enforcers, it's an interesting book, because this is looking into the guys who don't get all the recognition and they don't get all of the discussion in terms of voting for awards, any of that stuff. These are the guys who just sort of come in and go out of the NHL, and you may not even realize that they're gone until after you're watching a video package. You go, oh yeah, Basile McRae, what happened to him? This book will tell you. So, you know, let me know what you guys think, and thank you very much for watching.